Hello to everyone. All of those who may be joining this study, these moments of reflections. Feel welcome. As we today study a bit more about Spiritism inspiring lives. For all of us who are joining us, feel welcome. For us to start our moments of reflections, we kindly ask you, for those who want to follow and engage in this inner harmonization process. Harmonizing our minds, our hearts, disconnecting from the external reality so that we bring the focus within ourselves and choose to focus on the center, that we can observe our breathing. Observe as we breathe in and breathe out. And in that way, feeling more connected internally as we are assisted by the good spirits. Let's also perceive the good energies around us. Doesn't matter where we are all blessed and assisted in this moment. And in that way, as we are allowing ourselves to be feeling the good energies around us, we choose to start our reflections today. Feel welcome. So as we initially mentioned, our topic today will be identity of spirits, distinction of good and bad spirits. Our aim is not to focus about the spirits in the spiritual world. It is about to focus about ourselves, either spirits who are incarnate as all of those in the spiritual world. Because we depart from the viewpoint that we are all immortal spirits. We are all immortal beings. We all are on the journey of evolution. So in that way, we all here can today start to think about our own reality as we are learning through the physical body, but understanding that we are not a physical body. We are essentially spirits. And in that way, I invite all of you, also for those who are with us, can join us through the chats in our channels, YouTube, Facebook, those who are with us as well, that we can carry on together. You can bring also your questions or your thoughts about the themes, because it is very important, this theme, once it focuses on each one of us, either us who are incarnate and all of those who also are with us from the spiritual world, because we know each time when we gather together to reflect about these topics, we also are connected with those who are also aiming to learn. We are all learners. The identity of spirits, distinction of good and bad spirits. Good and bad in terms of internal values, internal aspects of perceptions that we learned, but also based on the universal laws. We could even say our strengths and weak points that we all still have and are working on. And our reflections are based on the Medium's book by Allan Kardec. Allan Kardec was, as he is deceased already, he was a great French philosopher, educator, and scientist. So the spirits brought through him some informations that can help us through the Medium's book, understanding that we are all immortal beings, spirits, and we also are all mediums, either ostensive or natural. And all of us still are in the learning process. It might be given as an invariable rule and one without exception, that the language of the spirits are always in accordance with the degree of their evolution. That is very important for us to understand. We all express ourselves according to our level how we educated ourselves, or even how we have been educated, if we haven't yet reviewed our systems, our internal systems, or our internal patterns. The superior spirits not only say good things, but also say them in terms absolutely exempt from all triviality. There is also a different element for us to consider in our self-awareness process, in our self-knowledge, that we start to observe what predominates in terms of mind way of communicating. Because that, again, it reflects where we are individually, and also as spirits, as immortal beings who are back on the school earth again, because it's not the first time, what we can choose already to promote ourselves, to evolve in terms of concepts, values, which they will be presented through the way that we communicate. And the way that we communicate is the way that we think, either conscious or unconsciously. The proposal of, or the goal of the aim of our reincarnation once more on earth, it is really to favor our own evolution, our own progress. Language always reveals its origin, both by the thoughts it expresses, or by form, and even if some spirits wants to deceive us about his supposed superiority, it will be enough to talk to him for some time in order to perceive reality. When we say his spirit, we don't refer only to the disincarnate ones, because we are all spirits, and if we pay attention, first always with ourselves, with our relationship with us, with our relationship with others, what are our intentions? When we express, when we communicate, what is our language? What are our motivations behind it? Therefore, when we are also in a position that we are talking to somebody else, which is a spirit, either incarnate or disincarnate, we can also more easily distinguish through our own inner evolution what comes from the self level and what may emerge from the ego state of mind. So first, always focus within us, and secondly, helping us when we are relating with others, so that we also, in all the opportunities when we are interacting with other beings, that we may choose to continue to also evolve more in our abilities to discern, in our abilities to express ourselves in a more freer way. And when I say freer way, I mean in a more adult way, in a more centered way, in a more healthier way, as we are connected more with our inner wisdom, and therefore we also choose to stimulate these values or concepts from our higher self. And as we carry on here, in order to learn a bit more about the identity of the good and bad spirits, is still we learn in the Medium's book, kindness and affability are essential attributes of the purified spirits. They have no hatred, neither to men nor for the spirits. Again, here we can also learn then in our self-observation what may be predominating within myself. Of course, no one is perfect on earth. We are all imperfect, essentially loving and valuable human beings, imperfect, who are in the process of perfecting ourselves. In which level is my kindness already developed? How far can I go in terms of expressing my affability? I am conscious in my daily living to carry on expanding and developing it further, knowing that I still much more closer to my start point than on the perfection level, which is a long journey ahead still. And what do I do when I'm interacting with other spirits, with other beings? What do I do when their shadows emerge in my relationship? Do I respond in an automatic way, in an unconscious way, expressing also my own shadows? That could be through the language of thoughts and could also be expressed through our words. Or are we already more conscious and freely choosing to develop more affability, more kindness within. So reminding ourselves that we have options while we are relating with others, because while we are relating with others, we are always relating with ourselves too. And once our own shadows emerge, we may choose to enlighten them, as Jung recommends to us. Enlightening our own shadows means to address these limitations and choose freely in a rational way now to restructure them. They lament the weakness, the good spirits, criticize and the mistakes, but always in moderation, without anger and without animosity. It is admitted that truly good spirits only want goodness and say good things. Therefore, it must be concluded that everything which denotes, in the language of spirits, lack of goodness and kindness cannot come from a good spirit. So that is relevant in our own self-education process, observing our own, let's say, ways, perhaps that the tendencies that we still have in gossiping, in slandering, because those are always elements of negativity, of imperfections, which reflect deeper down or on, let's say, low self-esteem or inferior complex or on lack of self-worth, which we haven't stimulated ourselves. But in any moment, once we realize that, we can choose to connect with our higher self and then embrace these limitations and not validate them anymore, although we accept them as part of our own journey at the moment. But with our own free will, we choose to learn that we have other options to relate with us, no longer to validate the ego's tendencies, but to heal those tendencies which need our attention. And in that way, as I mentioned at the beginning, that we, all of us are spirits, those who are incarnate and those who are disincarnate, and all of us are surrounded by other minds. So what we are here reflecting today is fundamental, so that we can also change the companies that are always with us according to our thoughts, according to our emotions, according to our tendencies, according to our instincts, according to our sentiments. And as more as we heal ourselves, surely we are also cooperating in healing the others who are around us, especially those who are willing to choose also the pathway of evolution in the moment, because sometimes we may delay it, and that is not good for us, because we suffer our own conflicts as a consequence for that. But each time when we give us the opportunity to renew, to learn to be humble, and yes, we do mistakes, and mistakes are part of learning, we also observe ourselves that we are freely choosing to become less and less critical of ourselves once we realize our own imperfections, our own limitations, or our own shadows, whatever word suits us best, because we are referring to the same characters. As we carry on, we learn then. Intelligence is far from being a certain sign of superiority. That is important throughout our evolution. Surely, all of us who study the human evolution, we find out we have a time, a period, where we really value excessively the intellectual intelligence. But also, as researchers carry on, everything evolves, all the theories evolves, because science is here to develop and expand any idea, any philosophy, any theory which so far we developed. And then we find out later on that we are not just intellectual beings, but we are also emotional beings. And therefore, we are now also invited to become aware of our emotional intelligence, which usually is behind our way of being. One spirit can be good, affable, and have limited knowledge, while another, intelligent and educated, can be very inferior in morality. Exactly what I explained. We cannot develop the two aspects, the intellectual and moral, in the same way, in the same time, in the same existence, because there's a lot of to learn. And existence, even if we live around 80, 90 years old, physically speaking, that is like a glimpse of an eye. So we learn and we develop the intellectual intelligence, then we do a lot of mistakes sometimes because we still are almost like blind on the emotional level. When we refer morality, that is directly related to our emotional development. And then later on, we learn through our own mistakes. So it's important to observe in the moment where I am, because we are here in the school earth to focus on our own evolution, not in a selfish way. When I say where I am, I mean in terms of inner reflections, in an honest, sincere way, so that I can also transcend and also promote my ethical values, which is through developing my intellectual intelligence, my emotional intelligence, and also above all, my spiritual intelligence. Otherwise, I may know a lot of knowledge about my process, but I may not choose to engage in the changing process, which is relevant for me then to promote myself or all of us. Experience shows that the wise, as well as other individuals, especially the recent disincarnate, still find themselves under the domination from the prejudice of corporeal life. They do not immediately free themselves from the mechanisms of the system. The human science they know is not always the evidence of their infallibility as spirits. This aspect in the medium's book is fundamental for us who still are incarnated, who still are in the flesh, in the body, but we are not a physical body, that we also already learn what we can change in the present here. So when we disincarnate, that we are freer within and less attached to the corporeal references. It does not mean to neglect the corporeal existence. It means that we expand our consciousness, that we can live more from the soul level onwards and make choices that promote us the inner freedom, so that we engage in the corporeal experience in a relative perspective and not in absolute perspective. That helps us a lot. Otherwise, we will disincarnate and we will not die, because we are immortal, we are without a physical body, and we will have the same tendencies either on the strength level onwards or on the shadow level onwards. And of course, all the elements on the shadow level onwards, if we don't address them, if we deny or if we ignore them, they cause conflicts for us. So it is relevant to observe those aspects and see how far we can choose to invest in our own inner promotion. Good spirits are never offended when questioned, for they themselves advise it, and because they have nothing to fear from the examination. This also is a very important aspect in our self-analysis, because we are interacting with each other by the natural law of society, that we can also perceive our own shadows and learn about them. And when we are questioned, either professionally or in our homes, in our relationships, when we react, that means that we are quite unconscious about our own shadows. So that when we learn that the good spirits, the good are the ones who already promoted themselves and are ahead of us in the scale of evolution. They also went through this shadow period where we find ourselves, or this ignorant period, and they promoted using their free will and stimulated their own inner superior resources, which are based on the universal values, which refers to our virtuous reality that we all bring. Therefore, in case I feel offended, I may bring the reflections to myself in a loving way, in an assertive way, and may choose now to address these elements. What are the causes? Why did I feel offended? And I may find the roots and the causes of it, which usually is my selfishness, my pride, my vanity. And then I can choose to work gradually on it, especially when we learn humbleness, which is the strength of the soul, and place ourselves in the position as a learner, which is okay when we do mistakes, as long as we don't repeat in it, because otherwise we would be increasing our own wounds instead of healing them. Only the bad spirits are offended and try to avoid it, which proves they are misleading spirits. Here we also learn in the Medium's book how important our self-analysis is, always in an honest way, in a sincere way, and trying once more, even if we fail, try once more, remembering that we bring the self-actualization process innate in ourselves. Therefore, we all can choose to repeat as many times as needed, up to the point that we consolidate the new ways of being, which really improves our inner happiness, our inner fulfillment, our inner well-being, which then impacts our integral health. As we proceed here, we learn it means the means of recognizing the quality of the spirits can be summarized in the following principles that we find in the Medium's book in the item 267. We go through briefly for us to learn about ourselves and also about which kind of spirits do we attract here through the way that we are. First says, good sense is the only criteria by which to discern the value of the spirits. Every formula given for this purpose by the spirits themselves is absurd and cannot proceed from superior spirits. The criteria to discern. So therefore, all of us are in need to develop discernment. Discernment is one of the values of the higher self, which we learn gradually. Because when we talk about consciousness, it's not something that is switch one button on and off. We need to stimulate our reasoning. We need to stimulate our own brains or our minds or our ways of expressing, to think about making new psychic connections, that we can promote new concepts, new understandings. That is fundamental for us. And then the second one is the spirits are judged by their language and by their actions. The actions of the spirits are the sentiments they inspire and the advice they give. And the third one is it being admitted that good spirits can say and do good. Nothing bad can come from a good spirit. So here we see that the actions of a spirit are the sentiments they inspire and advice they give. The advice they give, in a sense, how we express ourselves, how we refer to different experiences, is our way of expressing more in positive, is our way of communicating more on a negative way, that we are always disturbing relationships, to slander, to gossip, which really comes from our internal, let's say, psychic infection, which we came back to the school earth to learn to discern and learn in a loving way to re-educate ourselves. Because high self-esteem, centeredness, self-value, all of those, let's say, higher references, they need our attention to be exercised. Once we recognize our own limitations, we want choose freely to develop goodness. Goodness always in a sense, what is good for me and what is good for others. As we are reflecting the higher potentials of the soul, meaning the universal values for every spirit, wherever we are, therefore what is good for me also needs to be good for others. Otherwise, we still find ourselves temporarily in a very selfish way. I may choose what is good for me, but I may not consider what is good for my brother or sister in humanity. And here we are really coming to the point through self-love, which is really expanding goodness within ourselves, that we reach a level gradually to also express goodness around us with those who are, that we become beings who are more easily able to forgive, who are more easily to engage, to cooperate for the good of all, who are more easily also to forgive ourselves as we are promoting goodness with them. The superior spirits have a language always worthy, noble, elevated, with not the least tinge of triviality. They say everything with simplicity and modesty. That is very important also for our own inner promotion, or our own internal healing, or conquering our own internal health, or real happiness. So again, what is the way that I express myself? If I don't know, sometimes it's good when we can even record ourselves and then later on listen, for me to identify my patterns, my systems, and then also encourage myself to change what already I feel that is possible in order for me to promote the simplicity of the heart. Because sometimes we are so full of inner conflicts, even if we don't know, that we find it difficult even to silence. When I have that aspect, it's important also to train my mind using some breathing exercises or meditation or yoga. It depends on each one of us, what we feel more comfortable with, so that we learn to calm down and learn to listen us, so that we also can feel comfortable in moments of silence, that we don't have that urge always to talk or whatever, even if is saying something which doesn't help me to, let's say, consolidate values or concepts that promotes ourselves internally. And of course, the inferior spirits, they are always talking about anything, everything, and they are not considering the truth. They are not considering the impact in other people's. Neither do they consider how this negativity is impacted themselves. So that aspect is also relevant for us to become conscious. Because as more as I may be on an unconscious level, just talking, because internally I'm in this turmoil, then I'm also hurting myself. Somehow, somewhere, in some way, I will choose to learn to calm down, to center, and so learn also to filter what I think, what I feel, and above all, learning to choose how I want to express myself. Always focusing on our inner higher self, so that we favor in that way our own internal independence and also our own internal goodness that we are promoting. We must not judge spirits by the material form, neither by their correctness of style. It is necessary to analyze their inner world, their words, observe them maturely and without prejudice. Any observation from logic, reason, and wisdom leaves no doubt of their origin, whatever may be the name under which the spirit presents itself. When we are relating with each other again from the perspective of transpersonal psychology, which really refers to our essence, which we are as immortal beings, then it's not about the words. We need to learn to read between the words. And also we can even go deeper as we promote us internally, expanding our consciousness, that we can even read between the words and pick up the message on the emotional level. On the emotional level, we cannot hide ourselves. No spirit can hide, because we are transparent. We can hide ourselves through the physical body. We can hide ourselves through clothes that we put on. We can hide ourselves through the intellectual intelligence. When I'm very, very intellectual, I can talk about a lot of things and blah, 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 blah. But if someone is more evolved than I am and is listen to that, they can pick up the energy on the mind emotional level, which of course will be quite disturbing and quite unbalanced. And we ourselves can also learn to listen to ourselves through the inner journey, as I mentioned previously, through meditation, through yoga, to breathing exercises, to time for ourselves. Then we become more in contact with these aspects, both from the ego state of mind and also from the self level, so that we allow that the self, the higher self, conducts, directs the ego's aspects which needed to be reintegrated, and so that we promote more internal harmony, that we heal our internal conflicts, and above all, communicate with ourselves and with others through words, through thoughts, through emotions, through the feelings, in a more affable way, in a more good way, in a more sincere way, because we are connected with our higher self better. The language of elevated spirits are always identical, if not in form, at least in essence. The thoughts are the same, whatever the time or place. but they will never be contradictory. That is important that we considered. If two spirits communicate, or two communications bear the same name and in opposition, one of the two are evidently false, and the true one will be the one which expresses union and charity. That again is important. What do I deliver through my way of talking? Union, fraternity amongst beings, or discord? In my way of expressing myself and communicating verbally or through my thinking, is that favoring charity, which means love, unity, fraternity, solidarity, respect, forgiveness? Or is it more in the slander way, gossip way, blaming way, critical way? In that way, I'm promoting disunion, discord, instead of uniting people, because of my corrosive way, because of my inner conflicts. And again, once I become aware of that, because we are here reflecting how to discern and identify the language of spirits, consider that we are one spirit, and we start with ourselves, and we can always change what doesn't bring happiness, doesn't bring harmony, doesn't bring health, I would say even. Good spirits tell only what they know. They are either silent or confess their ignorance of what they do not know. The bad speak of everything with boldness, without caring for the truth. Any notorious scientific heresy, any principle that shocks good sense, shows fraud, if the spirit pretends to be an enlightened spirit. This is why it's so important that we carry on evolving in our reasoning, in our emotional intelligence, because the truth or of the universal knowledge, we don't learn only through our cognitive, through our intellectual intelligence. We also learn through our emotional intelligence, because the center of ourselves is in the heart, or is in the chakra of love, where we are discerning better. So good spirits, because they are more simple in their hearts, they are more humble, they don't need to pretend to be who they aren't, they don't need anymore to appear what they are not, so they are more selfless. And in that way, when they know, they share their experience, and when they don't know, they just say, I don't know, or keep silent. That is also learning for us to conquer in our evolution pathway. We recognize frivolous spirits by the facility which they predict the future and predict material facts which we do not know yet. The good spirits may predict future things when that knowledge is useful for us to know, but they never fix dates. Therefore, any announcement of an event at a fixed date is a sign of mystification. How important it is, because these days with the technology, with the internet, we have everything available. But it's fundamental that we learn to discern what comes from which cause, so that we don't fall in the traps of others, neither of our own. So that we learn to distinguish what comes from good spirits or what is mystification. Mystification means lies, that we are not referring to what is correct. We are lying, we are mystifying. And of course, if we have this tendency, this comes from our, let's say, lower self. And once we again become aware of that, and become aware of the laws of cause and effect, that when we lie to others, we are lying to ourselves, and we are intensifying these shadows, we may freely choose to stop that. Then you may ask me, how? First, I would say learn to be humble. Learn to be simple in our hearts. Change our concepts, understanding that we already are loving beings in essence. We don't need to pretend to be what we aren't in order to show to others that we love ourselves, because that is lack of self-love. And as more as we are relating with us in this way, less vulnerable we are with suggestions that may come from other spirits who are mystifications. That is important. Self-care, that is part of self-care. Oops, here. We recognize frivolous spirits. Okay, I went through this one. Now, the superior spirits present themselves with simplicity. I went through that without prolixity. Their style is concise without excluding the poetry of ideas and expressions, clear, intelligible to all, and requires no effort to comprehend. They have the art to say a lot in few words because each word has its meaning. And that is also something that we will focus in ourselves. In which way to, or what is my tendency to communicate? And what I'm communicating, is it clear? The truth is, as more as we mature psychologically and emotionally, through our own efforts, we will simplify from within. Therefore, we will stimulate our own inner wisdom. And in that way, we will not have so much the need of the ego to talk, because we are more identified with our inner wisdom, which we have less need to talk so much, but what we say is essential. It cooperates for our own good, for our own evolution, and may cooperate for others. We have less the need just to verbalize sometimes our tendency, because I need to be right, others need to be listening what I'm saying. As more as we overcome this egoistic tendency, we are already stimulating within the self-love, and therefore we will also express ourselves what is more meaning. Good spirits never command. There is another good learning for us who also are developing the goodness within. They do not force themselves on anyone. In other words, they are no longer in the need of controlling people. Why? Because they already learned to control themselves through the learning process. In that way, we become freer within. We become more flexible. We become more tolerable. It's easy in that way. They advise, and if they are not listened to, they withdraw, because they respect everyone's consciousness, which is the opposite of bad spirits, which do not respect. They carry on insisting, carry on blaming, carry on projecting their own shadows, which may be the case that sometimes we do. But again, as we are in this loving moment in our existences, in our evolution, that we may choose now to, it's almost like put the brakes on and choose freely to exercise our free will, exercise our higher potentials of responsibility, which is nothing more than internal autonomy, to tell to ourselves, well, wait a minute, that serves me so far, but from now onwards I choose to behave and relate in a different way with myself and others. Good spirits do not praise. They approve when we do well, but always with reserve. The bad give exaggerated praise, stimulate pride and vanity, while preaching humility, and seek to exalt the personal importance of those which they choose to influence. It's very important here, so that we don't fall in the traps of the mystifying spirits, the bad spirits, so that we carry on developing self-care, self-love, and also developing our psychological, emotional, therefore spiritual independence, psychically speaking. Not that we become indifferent, but mentally and emotionally to develop this ability of approve the good that we do, understanding that we are all learning, that we still have shortcomings, and observe ourselves if we still are always expecting that others may praise us and may give these references, applaud us, and if they don't, we just criticize them. Then we need to look and address the cause of this behavior, which again brings us back to our low self-esteem, to our inferior complex. And then we can start to heal these aspects, engaging with them, approving our own efforts, forgiving ourselves in our mistakes, which is a gesture of self-love, and therefore to stimulate more humbleness and charity within, more learning to be more indulgent, more benevolent, more forgiving. And in that way, we are really soothing our hearts, we are healing ourselves, we become more healthier internally. The superior spirits despise in all things the triviality of form. Only ordinary spirits attach importance to petty details, incompatible with truly elevated ideas. Any meticulous prescription is a certain sign of inferiority and betrayal on the part of a spirit who takes an imposing name. That is important when we deal through the medium's book, when we learn, when we receive a message from the spirits. Don't focus on the name, focus on the essence of the message. And for that, we also need to learn to analyze ourselves. We need to develop the reflective aspect within, to learn to discern our own shadows from our own strengths that we carry, so that we can also discern when these messages come, that we may not feel through our pride or through our vanity very inflated because the name of a higher being, but it may not be a higher being. Remember, the bad spirits can mystify quite easily, especially when we are ignorant about these subjects, or if we are, let's say, on more the unconscious level of myself. As less as I know, more easily I am available to be suggested by other spirits, either incarnate or those disincarnate who still are with me on the mental and emotional level. Because on earth are not only the humans who are incarnated, but we have around 3-4 times more disincarnated spirits who already freed the physical body through disease, through the natural phenomenon of death, but still spiritually are attached to earth through our own behaviors and values and tendencies. This is why it's so important to reflect about discerning about the good and bad spirits. That really promotes our internal independence, that we can feel stronger spiritually to make our own choices of what we think and sustain our own thoughts, our own internal healthy resources. The good spirits are very careful to the advice they might give. They have only a serious and eminently useful aim. We should then regard with suspicion all motives that are not of this character, or that would be condemned by reason, and should reflect seriously before undertaking them, for we might be exposed to uncomfortable mystifications. Uncomfortable mystifications will impact in our internal conflicts. Sometimes we are very uncomfortable. We may be dealing with our, let's say, inferior tendencies that we still all have and are working on, such as anger, frustration, irritation, that I may be really, or lack of forgiveness, and that may be expanded through the interference which we may allow other spirits to do. Therefore, as more as we discern, we may notice, we may perceive, because we are all subject to, but we may not identify with them. And that way, we are keeping neutral, we are keeping ourselves protected through the inner resources that we all bring. We recognize good spirits by their prudent reserve on all subjects that might expose others. They dislike to unveil evil. Malevolent spirits are pleasant in displaying them, while the good seek to attenuate the errors and teach indulgence. The bad exaggerate them and stir up discord by perfidious insinuations. Where I am in my tendencies is fundamental. We are here in a proposal of self-knowledge. As more as we'll read here between distinguish the identity of good and bad spirits, I can also, through self-knowledge, evaluate my own strengths and my own weaknesses and take care of my weaknesses. And here again, good spirits will be very prudent in terms of exposing the shadows of others. Why is that? Because the great level of love that they already conquered, the great level of charity which they developed, charity in a sense of ethical charity, which means they learn to be more benevolent, more indulgent, more forgiving. Therefore, even if they see the shadows and mistakes, they will not point them out. They will not exaggerate them. If they refer to the shadows, is in a way of helping us to heal them, and not in a way that we, as we quite often still do through the egoistic state of mind, vanity, selfishness, and pride, that we may go around in slandering and gossiping around people, which really exposes publicly our own shadows. So we may be in that way when we are in that vulnerable position, ethically, morally speaking, or psychologically and spiritually, whatever terminology we may use, which is the same reference, then we are very easily used by other spirits that we may end up being microphones of their own shadows, which find resonance in our own, and we project them on others. We already study in psychology, as Jung always presents to us. When we talk about somebody else in a negative way, we actually are talking much more about us than the other person. That is a very good tool to evaluate ourselves. Those who are more evolved than us can see us already where we are as children. The good spirits look at us and see us as children, as babies, when we behave in this narrow-minded way. And in that way, they are loving beings and are knowing that one day we will learn. But for us, it is important when we choose to learn now and to put effort into now. Why? Because we are healing ourselves. We are becoming more, let's say, in harmony with our higher self. We will feel less threatened amongst the different differences in peoples, in lives where we are. We have less need to complain and to have the last word in any situation. We have the need to participate, to cooperate in a healthy way when we can bring any insight which may help ourselves and others. That is always welcome, but not the negative projections which easily flow through or on a way of expressing through slander and gossip. And then we also distance ourselves from the good spirits, as we all have a spiritual mentor, which is a spirit who is more evolved than us. When we choose to be connected and identified with our own shadows, and sometimes even having pleasure, we choose freely, temporarily, to be distant from these, let's say, friend of ours. When we choose now to become aware and listen even the inspirations and make efforts to overcome our own shadows, then it's almost like becoming closer to them and receiving also the benefit of these healthy relationships. Bad or imperfect spirits betray themselves by material signs which cannot be mistaken. Their action on the medium is sometimes violent and provocative, of sudden and abrupt movements, a feverish and convulsive agitation, totally opposed to the calm and gentleness of the good spirits. That is important for us to learn as mediums, as I mentioned at the beginning, ostensive or natural, that we may observe our own nature. When we are agitated, when we feel like we need to say something to others, and it comes really from a very disturbed place, then we are quite often guided and controlled by other spirits who may not like us or may not like the other person that we are communicating with. Fundamental to filter that, so that we also put through self-awareness, through self-inner control, the limits of what we allow that comes through us, remembering that we still all bring limitations and shadows. But validating them is an option. and our choice to be on earth, to promote us, to evolve, and to heal ourselves is exactly to develop the discernment to know what is good for me here and now, in a medium term and in a long term, knowing that I will not die, I will disincarnate, I will carry on, and I will inhire my own values, which I choose to validate in the present. Let's always choose to be in our own inner renewal, in our own inner actualization process. Let's choose to come closer and closer to our dear good friends in spirit, which we all have. Imperfect spirits. Oops, sorry. I lost myself now where I was here. Bad or imperfect spirits betray themselves, as we already said. And then we move on here, that imperfect spirits often use their names. That is important again. As more as we actualize ourselves, an actualization process is a self-love process that we gradually conquer through developing our own reasoning, our own free will, or on a way of understanding. If I behave in a good way, I do good to myself and to others, or vice versa. The knowledge that some spirits show, often with a kind of ostentation, is not a sign of their superiority. Unchangeable purity of moral sentiments is, in this respect, the true touchstone. Is fundamental mentioning that we all need to develop our intellectual intelligence. But when we prioritize only intellectual intelligence and don't develop emotional intelligence, we can know a lot, we can have a lot of knowledge, know a lot of theories, but we can do great harm to ourselves and to others. And we can be related with our own bad tendencies, and therefore also connected, unrelated with bad spirits. So as more as we change and address our own shadows, enlightening them, as Young teaches us, through the process of individuation in a loving way, not in a critical way, we also expand and develop our sentiments through this ability of loving ourselves, of loving others. And when I mean loving, I'm talking about a more mature level of love. I'm not talking about the infantile or more adolescence level of love, which is very compensating. I only do that if you do it. No, I'm talking about this loving way that we choose to do good for the reason of doing good, knowing that whatever good we do freely without secondary intentions, we are doing good for ourselves first, and also we are doing good for those who are around us. And that promotes even our living in our homes, with our families, in our workplaces, as more as we behave in that way, because we become less and less resistant in terms of dealing with some issues, in presenting ourselves in a more balanced, assertive way. Surely we all have the need to position ourselves, be in the family setting, work-wise, in the community. But how we do that will change. Instead of imposing, controlling in a negative way, we will more and more engage freely, spontaneously, in cooperating for the good of all. And then we learn here that it is not enough to question a spirit. It is not enough to question a spirit to know the truth. First of all, we must know to whom we are speaking to, because the inferior spirit, ignorant as they are, deal frivolously with the most serious issues. We can receive very wrong and negative information from a frivolous spirit. If we, sometimes psychically, and because we are ostensive mediums, we can hear the spirits, for those who have this ostensive mediumship, this faculty. But again, it's fundamental that we learn to identify the good and bad spirits. So when I hear the spirits through my mediumship, that I know how to discern and what to do with that, and not only take on because it is a spirit. Malevolent spirit can inspire us in a very wrong way, in a very, let's say, negative way, that later on we need to deal with the consequences. So it's always important to learn to identify the good and the bad spirits. And here we are bringing today some reflections which may help us. For superior spirits, humor is often fine and funny, but never trivial. Amongst the mocking spirits, when they are not brutal, sarcastic satire is often very convenient. Again, as more as we grow psychologically, emotionally, therefore spiritually, in developing our intellectual intelligence, in developing our emotional intelligence, and above all, in developing our spiritual intelligence, which is the last intelligence where we are now learning about. Because otherwise, I can have a lot of knowledge, I can identify my emotions, and I may not have the spiritual intelligence developed to know what to do in a discerned way in order to promote my internal reality towards centeredness, towards inner harmony. And therefore, I may, instead of investing in promoting my evolution, I may be reinforcing my own bad tendencies. But let's always reflect the habits, the tendencies of superior spirits, of good spirits. And when we talk about superior or good spirits, always bear in mind that that means they are more evolved on their emotional intelligence. Above all, they are more loving, they are more forgiving, they are more flexible, they are more tolerable. That is easier for them to relate with the limitations of others. And that is our aim, what we are really focusing on here today. In order to judge spirits, it is important to judge ourselves, as we learn here in the Medium's book. Because if we don't learn how to judge ourselves, we also may find it very difficult how to discern the good and the bad spirits. Because quite often we are driven still by our own shadows. Therefore, I may be inspired by a negative spirit, either incarnate or disincarnate. When we are in these groups of slander and gossips, we are relating with each other as bad spirits. We still have, with our bad tendencies. We may have good tendencies already, but in these moments, our shadows are really coming to the public. So again, how important it is here to be aware of our own tendencies. So when I'm with others in the collective setting, that I may take care of myself, and expanding self-love, in expanding self-respect, in expanding dignity, which will directly impact my higher self-esteem, my capacity to promote goodness within myself, self-worth I will also be developing, and that will impact my psychological and emotional health, which will impact my physiological, biological health as well. And as we are coming to the end, understanding only the virtue can purify the spirit, bring it closer to God, and expand its knowledge. Identifying the bad and good spirits means identifying our own good and bad tendencies, so that we choose to actualize ourselves, to change, to promote towards goodness, because essentially we are all good beings, and we are all beings created by God. We are all brothers and sisters in humanity. Therefore, what is the reason to carry on projecting our own shadows to others, when we are the cause of them and we suffer the consequences as well, when we actually can now choose to heal them through love? Virtue, when we talk about virtue, it's important to understand what we learn in the Gospel according to Spiritism, that virtue to the highest degree is the set of all the essential qualities that constitute a good person. The good qualities, or the essential qualities, is nothing more than the higher potentials of the soul, which we all bring in germ within ourselves. But we are required to stimulate them. Let's invest in this ability to reflect inwards as good beings, as essentially as we are. And now, in a humble, sincere way, choosing to expand, to stimulate their virtues. Well, if I don't know which values are those, we would suggest some of them. Humility, humbleness, forgiveness, tolerance, patience, cooperation, respect towards others, indulgence, resignation, tolerance, if I haven't mentioned that, and so many others. And in that way, we are promoting a better world within ourselves and a better world around us where we are. All virtues have their merit because they are all signs of progress on the path of goodness. All virtues. The most meritorious is the one which is based on the most disinterested charity. So when we choose to forgive, it's not because I choose to show a mask how good I am. I choose to forgive because I'm learning to forgive my own limitations, my own imperfections, my own shadows. I stop to criticize myself. I stop to feel guilty because egoistically I tend to be where I'm not. But through self-love, I embrace myself as a valuable human being, as we all are essentially. And choose now then to become more loving, more forgiving, more silence if I cannot cooperate for the good of all, more tolerant with ourselves and others. And in that way, dear friends, we are really promoting our own great virtue of discernment when we reflect about these items that we brought here from the Medium's book, but also would suggest for every one of us to choose freely to study the Medium's book, which has much more information than the topics that we presented here today, and therefore increasing our self-awareness and favoring our own well-being through this inner transformation, through this inner promotion that we freely choose to do. We are all invited. I would say even we have been invited for more than 2,000 years already by the Enlightened Spirits who are inviting us in a loving way. Let's choose today to cure, to heal ourselves. And they respect our free will. It's down to us if we want to engage with that, and with those who are engaged already in this process, choose to carry on, because it is a process. It's not something that we will conclude in this existence, but we can promote ourselves a lot. As more as we identify the good aspects in us and the bad elements, the good still need to be promoted further, and the bad ones, which are our shadows, we choose gradually to enlighten, which means to actualize, bearing in mind that we have options through our free will. We always can choose to be better today than we have been yesterday, and tomorrow better than today. And in that way, we are coming to the end today, wishing a lot of peace to everyone, and really communicating that we all bring the actualization process within. Doesn't matter what is happening with us, doesn't matter in which level in our evolution where we find ourselves. We are essentially beings of love, created by God with love in order for us to learn to love ourselves and to love others. Let's together embrace this proposal gradually and improve ourselves, improve our family environment, improve our professional environments, promote, improve our collective environment wherever we are. In that way, let's close with giving thanks to the enlightened beings who have been with us throughout these reflections. Those who are with us, inspiring us, and those who dearly love us, the good spirits. Let's give thanks for them, for their time, for their love towards every and each one of us, for their constant inspirations, for us also to choose to love ourselves more and more, so that we can also choose to love others. Love meaning respecting others. Love also meaning to choose a pathway of inner dignity, so that we can also be dignified beings. To love also meaning to learn to be more humble, which is really be, let's say, better every moment. We are essentially love. We are essentially goodness within. Love also means to cooperate for the good of others, be at home, to be more forgiving, to silent if we cannot cooperate so that we bring down the temperature sometimes where we are. And also we express our gratitude for everything that we have so far. We even express our gratitude for what we call our challenges, which we call problems. Problems are nothing more than experiences to favor our own evolution. We express our gratitude for our spiritual guide who is always with us, guiding us, inspiring us, for us to carry on, to stand up, never give up this proposal. We give thanks to Jesus, the guide of humanity on earth, this being of love, which involves every and each one of us, and he still believes in our ability of renewing. Our gratitude towards God, the loving and merciful Father, this enlightened being who created the universe and everything and everyone, for all reincarnation, for the infinite possibilities of renewal, for everything that we received here and every day. Thank you for all of those who have been with us, all of those who are part in our existences, cooperating for us to invest in this internal relationship for goodness. And in that way, may these feelings of goodness persevere within us, and may we choose practicing them in every day, today, tomorrow, and always. So be it. In that way, we are coming to the end today, wishing you peace to all. Bye-bye.